Hey guys, I'm Dov, and today I'm back with more Total War Warhammer 2 online action. Today we're back with the Greenskins, gonna be taking a look at a replay from SKARSNIK, his Greenskins taking on the Vampire Coast. So let's go ahead and have a look at the build. This is potentially a pretty rough matchup for the Greenskins, so let's see how SKARSNIK is going to approach this. He's got SKARSNIK here, just with WA. Interesting, a nice cut down, cheap version of SKARSNIK. Nasty Skulkers, we've got Savage Orcs and Savage Orc Biggins mixed in the front line. The 8 Peak Loonies, Unbreakable Regiment of Renown as well. In terms of the second line here, it's going to be a mix of Orc Airboys. We've got the Rusty Airs, more Orc Airboys, Goblin Archers as well, an Orc Shaman with Brainburster and Fist of Gork, a couple of Force Goblin Spider Riders, and some Vanguarded Mangy Marauders. We've also got some more Spider Riders there in the back. For the Vampire Coast, no surprise, we've got Luther Harkon up in the air here. He's got All Hands Sway, Hornswaggle, Death Shriek, and yeah, I don't know if he brought the Salon Gold. Does not look like he actually brought it. And if I can just slow this down momentarily here, he did bring Power Siphon, so the Vampire Coast player needs to go pop that on SKARSNIK just as soon as possible. Basically, there's no reason to not do that right at the start of the battle to siphon the WA. So that they can't use that on the charge. Going to be very essential. So far, I haven't seen that pop on SKARSNIK. We'll have to keep on his little toolbar here. Keep an eye there to see if that effect pops up. But nonetheless, we've got some deck dropper handguns, plenty of deckhand mobs, pole arms as well. Got a couple of depth guard, one with pole arms, one with double axes. Fleet Captain Lore of Deeps. Interesting. Personally, I like Lore of Vampires better when I'm running with Luther Harkon, but Denizens of the Deep, Fog of the Damned. Fog of the Damned is going to be pretty good in this particular matchup to debuff the melee attack of the Greenskin units, typically one of their strong suits. Harkon, very risky dive here, does manage to terrify away the Rusty Airs, but the Spider Riders are going to be able to come in and trap him on the ground. Meanwhile, though, the Hounds do get into the Orc Airboys, and you can see the Power Siphon still hasn't been popped on SKARSNIK, and this is a huge mistake, not to mention Harkon's getting shredded by those Orc Airboys. We'll take a look at why in just a minute, but the Greenskins didn't quite get the WA on the charge, but now the WA coming down a little bit late, but nonetheless it is going to help these Savage Orcs clean up this front line even faster, and no ifs, ands, or buts, these zombies are going to get their faces beaten in by this heavy Orc infantry and everything. Looks like we're going to be trying to get some crabs to help stabilize here. The depth guard will definitely help in the areas where there are depth guard, but back to Orc Airboys for just a moment here. Orc Airboys really an underrated missile unit, as they have excellent AP values for a quote-unquote non-AP missile unit at 6 AP per shot. It's actually one of the highest, I think, AP values of a non-AP missile unit, especially when you combine it with the armor sundering of the Rusty Airs. You can do a lot of really good damage, especially because Harkon only has 80 armor. It's not the most in the world. When he gets hit by that armor sundering, it goes down to only 50, and that's in a bracket where these even the Goblin Archers can do some pretty solid damage. Goblin Archers, of course, have lower AP values, but do bring more unit models to the table. You get a full 90 unit models per unit, and only 1 AP per shot, but the higher volume of fire does help mitigate that lesser AP a little bit. But this Missile Death Star for the Greenskins, I know one of you had said in one of my early access videos that Greenskins could potentially have a tough matchup here. I agree. You know, not stopping the WA on SKARSNIK was definitely a mistake. You can see that Power Siphon has been popped way too late. I don't know that that would have necessarily saved the front line. It may have made this frontline engagement last a bit longer, but certainly these zombies were going to get cut up by Savage Orcs regardless. That being said, in the center, where there's this depth guard with pole arms, and there have also been some Rotting Prometheans summoned, this center engagement going a lot better. Meanwhile, over here, the dual axes also trading pretty efficiently into the Savage Orcs on that side. Meanwhile, the deck droppers have been able to help a little bit in this side engagement here. I haven't really been highlighting them too much, but deck droppers, super powerful unit and really underrated. I haven't seen people spam this unit too much, but the handgun variant in particular, I haven't really tried the other two variants too much, but the handgun variant in particular, very powerful unit, lots of missile damage. They have a pretty good number of unit models as well, 18 unit models firing with that high of a Missile damage does quite a bit, and they can definitely tear through quite a few units. Pretty good refire rates and everything, but at this point, there's plenty of Skulkers, and you can see Sladex just kind of keeping a lot of the rallied units as a reserve. No real reason to sacrifice these tattered units of Goblins and Savage Orcs and so on with their lowish leadership. They'll just get terrified away by Harkon and everything, so better to keep them as a reserve and protect against something like this, where you have these deck droppers coming in. Unfortunately, a little bit of a late reaction there, but nonetheless, Harkon going down in the center pocket, more Rotting Promethean summoned, and the fact that the Orc Airboys are decent-ish in melee. They really don't have the best melee defense, but 23 attack with 34 weapon strength especially, not completely terrible, means they'll be okay at holding back this melee engagement, at least for a time. The nasty Skulkers, though, of course, with their many unit models and great AP, are going to be actually a pretty decent counter to Depth Guard, just because they get out-mobbed so hard. If we go ahead and have a look here at just kind of an overhead view of these guys fighting, you can see each Depth Guard is engaged in base contact with like 3 or 4 Goblins at a time, plus maybe a Savage Orc or 2. That's a major problem when you have a unit that's only 45 models and you're facing a unit that has pretty efficient stats and 120 unit models at full strength. Granted, being debuffed quite nicely, the Fog of the Damned being used to keep the Vampire Coast in this battle. They're certainly not out of it by any means. The balance power is still pretty close, if slightly in the Greenskins' favor, but yeah. Depth Guard really don't trade efficiently into nasty Skulkers, so having a reserve unit or 2 like this to go in and clean up in the late game can be very useful, although this sort of highlights their weakness as well. Their relatively poor leadership means that Harkon can get in there, terrify them away relatively easily. That being said, SKARSNIK is cleaning up a few units. Looks like he's kind of staring down those Depth Guard. Yeah, giving them some taunts and so on. Him and Goblin decide to go over here, try and finish off that fleet captain. Those Depth Guard definitely need to get into this particular battle to help. But yeah, Brain Burster, and I haven't really been highlighting it too much, but Sladex been using that Brain Burster to very good effect to disrupt some of the lighter units. It I noticed does pretty good amount of damage to some of the zombie units, maybe because of the way they're spread out and everything. But deck droppers coming down, trying to finish off these Goblin Archers, you know, just with their low leadership, maybe see them off here. The deck dropper is definitely still, I would say, the biggest threat on the field for the Vampire Coast. But Harkon at this point, pretty low on HP, and SKARSNIK almost completely untouched with his, I don't think he has, oh, he does have charge defense against large, anti-large AP, not the worst stats in the world. They're not really good, but they're not awful. But if Harkon comes down, I mean, that charge defense does apply, the anti-large AP applies, he's got poison as well, plenty of supporting units in addition. So SKARSNIK actually looking to be in pretty good shape to take this one home, and who would have thought SKARSNIK, probably one of the worst legendary lords in the game, in a matchup that many people would consider to be completely disfavorable for the Greenskins, able to pull out a pretty convincing victory here against a decent build. I mean, granted, there were some mistakes made. We highlighted the mistake of not stopping the wall on the charge. Again, I don't know that that really would have saved the Vampire Coast in the front line. It may have made that engagement take a bit longer, and the Greenskins may have potentially taken a few more losses there, but I don't know if that necessarily would have saved them. You know, there may have been some other mistakes made, certainly, but at this point, Greenskins just cleaning up hardcore, and Luther Harkon trying to stabilize things here. The deck droppers using up the last of their ammunition. One other big mistake I would definitely say in this particular battle, the deck droppers should have been focusing on SKARSNIK. He has no missile block chance, and even though they're AP, and you may think you want to go after some of these more important infantry, if you take out the leadership of the Greenskins, obviously, their other units are going to be a lot more likely to rout. So I would have probably tried to focus with these, even like at this late stage of the game. Unfortunately, at this point, there's no ground units left for the Vampire Coast, so they're going to have to push something onto the ground. It looks like Harkon chasing those airboys might fulfill that, but even in this late stage, you might be able to pick off SKARSNIK if you just focused all these guns on him, but the Vampire Coast player choosing instead to focus on the infantry here, particularly the Savage Orcs, which is understandable, but at the same time, you know, these guys could be terrified away relatively easily by Harkon if you were to take out SKARSNIK, but with SKARSNIK being completely healthy here, that's going to keep the balance of power tilted very much. In the late game especially, Lords and Heroes HP matters a lot for the balance of power. So if you were to do a bunch of damage to SKARSNIK, that's going to bring the balance of power back towards even. You're going to give yourself a bit of padding towards army losses as it pertains to the flying units and not having anything on the ground. You may be able to buy yourself a little bit more time before the leadership just gives out on your units. But in general, you know, maybe you take out SKARSNIK here, you come back with Harkon with the rest of his ammo and finish him off. Harkon's even doing a bit of decent damage right now, so just imagine if the deck droppers had been focusing on SKARSNIK rather than the infantry in this late game stage here. Potentially could have at least gotten him low enough to terrify him away, and at that point you could probably finish him off with Harkon and maybe terrify away the rest of the Greenskins. But as it stands right now, we'll go ahead and fast forward as the Vampire Coast uses up the rest of their ammo. And, you know, there are a few... Oh, just kidding. There were some missile units rallying for the Greenskins, but at this point, we've got the Mangy Marauders coming back. They're going to lose a few shots here, but the Vampire Coast eventually going to have to come down into the ground to melee. They have managed to bring the balance power all the way back towards even, and you can see SKARSNIK has taken some damage with the Hornswaggle and everything. He's in a little bit of a rough shape. Harkon has managed to regenerate a lot of his HP back, so things still, even with the mistakes, not completely out of the woods for the Vampire Coast here, but SKARSNIK manages to get his charge defense against Harkon there. Harkon not really able to get the best contact. Going to try and get back up in the air, use the deck droppers to kind of screen out here. SKARSNIK gets a hit or two, but ooh, the Skulkers come in, get a beautiful smoke bomb, and stop Harkon dead in his tracks before he's able to get back up into the air. Yeah, SKARSNIK, unfortunately, probably not going to be able to push through these deck droppers, but still, catching these guys out on the ground for that extra moment definitely helps. SKARSNIK might actually get some attacks on some of these deck dropper models. Ooh, looks like he took down the unit model there. So, potentially helping in this late game, but that smoke bomb was a thing of beauty, and those Skulkers critically did not get terrified there. Able to hold their leadership together with SKARSNIK, again, supporting here. And just goes to show a few key mistakes could have brought this battle back in the other direction, but I do think that the Greenskins are going to take this home. We'll see. Still very close at the end of the day. And a key rear charge in the right situation could swing things back. But yeah, you can see once this unit of deck droppers is gone, Harkon I don't think can take all of this by himself, despite how powerful he is. And they are crumbling, so again, SKARSNIK not the target directly here. And a few key mistakes here, not focusing the leadership of the Greenskins with some of the abilities and, you know, the ammo and everything there. So, yeah, very fun battle. Thanks to Slade X for submitting that one. You can see the deck droppers just about finished off there. Harkon, it does manage to finish off some more Savage Orcs, but the Skulkers protecting SKARSNIK here quite nicely. Of course, Harkon's got to come down to the ground without any other units here, and he comes down right in the middle of everyone's. So the Mangy Marauders, who are actually immune to psychology, not the best leadership in the world, but they are immune to psychology, so they'll not get terrified. SKARSNIK comes in, he gets a couple of attacks here. The Skulkers are in here as well, and it's going to be all said and done for Luther Harkon here in the late game. And yeah, tries to retaliate a bit there, but the anti-large AP of SKARSNIK and all the AP of all these Skulkers, the Mangy Marauders also chipping in a bit of damage there as well, finally brings down Harkon, and it's a victory for the Greenskins. So, well played to both players. Hope you guys enjoyed watching that one. Again, I think there's a few key mistakes there that had the Vampire Coast taken out SKARSNIK earlier in the battle, used a bit of their missile focus on him instead of on some of those other infantry. In that late game situation, Harkon probably would have finished him off, and it would have been a different story. You would have seen a mass terror route from the Greenskins, and it would have just been game over at that point. But as it stands, you know, a little bit of misplay by the Vampire Coast. Slade X able to take advantage and play very, very well here. Builds pretty unorthodox, and I do think that this is kind of the way that you're going to have to go as the Greenskins against the Vampire Coast. I don't know that SKARSNIK is necessarily the best option, but he's certainly cheap one. I might argue that you know, maybe you could look at taking the Goblin Great Shaman even as your Lord choice. You give him Vanguard. He even has Encourage now on the Wolf, so he can actually use a leadership buff to the units around him. But yeah, so definitely a matchup that is initially on the surface looks to be in favor of the Vampire Coast, certainly, but the Greenskins can still win given the right circumstances and the right builds and everything. So certainly looking forward to seeing Slate X play some more builds, hopefully with SKARSNIK. Hope you guys enjoyed watching this one. If you do like this sort of content, be sure to like, subscribe, hit that bell notification button so every time I upload a new video, you'll be notified. Thanks again for watching. We'll see you next time.